Hello and welcome to Center for Victory's podcast of Your Best Day Yet. It's Center for Victory. We're here to help unlock, reinforce, and enrich relationships through personal and professional development. I'm Eric Guy, Chief Victory Officer here at the Center for Victory. With me today, very special person, Pastor Dan Min. He leads a church at Penn State. We are, right?
We are.
Alliance Christian Fellowship. He's been married to his college sweetheart or high school sweetheart?
College sweetheart, yep.
Sweetheart of 14 years and has two lovely boys, and they've been at Penn State for 6 years now, I believe. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. Well, welcome, Dan. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be here with you, man.
And we're going to get in this month. We've been really dedicated to, it's National Mental Health Awareness Month. And our theme for this month is Get Your Mind Right. And I thought, really turn to you. I've heard you speak a couple times. You spoke a lot of truth into our son, and we're greatly appreciative of that. But really about, what's going on in our mind. Give us some tips and things like that. So the first question, Dan, for you is, how do you go about managing your own personal health?
Yeah. No, that's great. Eric, let me just first, before I answer that question, I should add to the introduction piece, my greatest honor and privilege that I have is pastoring your son, Josiah. So let's just put that out there as well. I love Josiah, I love the young man that he is, and he's continuing to grow and to be. It's a joy to watch him grow at Penn State. But how do I manage my own personal health? That's a great question, one that I'm always wrestling with. And I would say probably the top thing for me when it comes to mental health, I love this, the whole get your mind right also. It's just I think that's a primary theme as I work with college students and university students. There's just so much stuff that's jacked up in their heads here that, like, getting your mind right, man, that is like, man, that'll preach for sure. And so for me, getting my mind right entails prioritizing what's most important. For me, if my priorities are out of whack, man, my life just tailspins out of control. A lot of people say, it's important to manage your time. Time management is of utmost importance. And to that, I'd say, yes, it is. But even more so important than that is managing your priorities. Priorities dictate and determine how you lead your life. And Eric, this is the tyranny of the urgent, as they say, finds a way to kind of ebb away at our mental state, right? Like just the tyranny of what's urgent and pressing. And when I give into that urgent tyrant, I become more quickly drained and more just easily more irritable. Like I'm just not pleasant to be around, and so I have to learn to prioritize in my life what's important. And quite frankly, just without any abandonment or apology, for me, the biggest thing that's important to me is my faith. And I don't say that because I'm a pastor, I'm a reverend, or man of the cloth or anything like that. I just say that as a man, as a brother, as a husband, just a person. My faith is the most important thing about me. My faith in God. It's the filter by which I see all of life through. Everyone kind of interprets life through a particular filter, right? And so, depending on what kind of filter you're using, whether it's ambition or pain from your past or hope for your future, whatever it is, you kind of interpret life circumstances through that filter. And for me, my faith in God becomes the primary filter by which I interpret all of life's circumstances through. And so what that means, let me just clarify. What that means is I'm always asking the question, God, how are you seeing this? Like in my prayers and in my just sort of my quiet space and my thought life, I'm asking the question of God, in this present circumstance, how are you seeing things? Because if I'm able to see things from sort of that transcendent perspective, get my eyes up a little bit above the waters that want to drown me out, I'm able to put things like worry and anxiety in its proper place because I'm seeing it from a from a higher level. And so my faith filter and how God sees the circumstances of my life becomes of utmost importance. And then shortly thereafter, that is my marriage and my family. That's the next thing that is most important to me. When my marriage is rocky, uh, 14 years, they've been happy years. They have been, but we've had turbulent times and all those kinds of things. And when my marriage is out of whack or my family dynamic is not in sync, man, it takes a toll on my personal mental health. And so, I always tell young couples who are going into ministry, guys, remember your first and foremost ministry is to your family, even before your church family. I heard one pastor say it this way: I would much rather be a hero in my own home than a hero in my church home. And I love that because to me, that just prioritizes, again, I know, Eric, you're a big family guy like that. That is, for me, the most important thing right under my faith in God. And then the last thing I'd say, most important thing to me, it sounds trivial, but it's actually not, is my day off. I guard my day off. My day off is Friday. And here's the way I see it. If God needed to rest on the seventh day after creating all the universe, I probably should rest every once in a while, and so, I work it into my weekly rhythm and my routine every Friday. I don't touch work. I don't get near work. I don't schedule appointments or meetings or anything like that. I don't answer emails. Friday is my complete day off. And so I use that time to do things that recharge my battery, go for a hike with my wife. We often do a coffee date during the day, and, just finding those moments to really make most of life. And I love just the Center for Victory, trying to go for that victorious living lifestyle that, you can't do that if you don't have a day off incorporated into your weekly rhythm. And so I'd say that's how I manage my own personal health, by really prioritizing what's really important for me in my life. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, because a lot of times, especially what you said initially about what is a priority, because if you don't know what the priorities are, then you don't know how to make decisions. You're making decisions on everything that's urgent, and that's where people go back and say, I don't have time, I'm drained. They're burning the end of both ways, and it's just too much. So yeah, getting into this second question, what would you say are some important factors to getting your mind right and maintaining a healthy mental state?
Yeah. There's so much there. There's so much I could say. It almost seems as though every counseling session or every meeting I have with a college student somehow comes back to this piece of helping college students get their mind right and maintain a healthy mental state. And the thing that I always seem to come back to, whether it's a college student or, quite frankly, I could be sitting across the table from a 50-year-old man and still be dealing with this issue, is paying attention to your self-talk. Oftentimes the greatest enemies aren't the ones out there. They're the ones right in here. It's the tape that replays the script that you play over and over again in your head that says things like, you're not good enough, you're not doing enough, you're not measuring up. I'll just give you a quick example here, Eric. For me, in my life, I grew up in a traditional Korean home. I was born here, raised here all my life in New York, and but my parents were immigrants from Korea, and they had a strong work ethics, and they had it in their minds that their son, was going to be the smartest kid in the class. Like, you're Asian, you're supposed to be smart, like it's like one of these things where, but Eric, I got to tell you, I don't know what happened. I wasn't born with that gene. I wasn't born with straight A's. That just wasn't my thing. And so when I would come home with my grades, my parents would often say, without any evil intent or anything like that, but they would say things like, why aren't you getting grades like your friends, your other friends, so and so. And by the way, growing up in a small Korean community, I had a lot of other Korean friends, Asian friends, who were all born with that gene of straight A's. They were just crushing it, and I just wasn't. I was struggling. I was a solid C student, and so. Over time, you start hearing things like that long enough, you start adopting this personal script in your mind that says, well, dang, maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I'm not as bright as maybe I should be. And you start thinking that there's something wrong with you, so much to the point where as a 20 something, as a 30 something year old, you walk into a crowded room and you're starting to measure up the room by people's intellect. And you're starting to say, now who's the smartest person in this room whose shadow I'm going to be hiding in this way? And that's all. Here's the crazy thing. No one else is thinking that. It's all in here. It's like, it's my self-talk that, that just screams so loud oftentimes. And so like, I think for me, I gotta make sure I'm paying attention to my self-talk, and how I remedy that then becomes surrounding myself with the right kinds of voices. If I had, some negative voices that created these scripts, whether it was intentional or not, I've got to find ways to refute those lies, because that's really what they are. They're lies, and find the right kinds of voices that would speak truth into my world. And the Bible has a ton of things to say about this. Proverbs, the great wisdom literature, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. So don't roll with dummies, because you're going to do dumb things. And First Corinthians, I think it's 15, bad company corrupts good character. And so surround yourself with the right kinds of voices, and over time you're going to start finding new scripts being formed in your mind. And Eric, I got to tell you, the coolest thing for me as a college campus minister is coming across a student year one as a freshman, and seeing them through 4 years of college, and seeing how their scripts in their life and their self-talk changes. They're no longer driven by the lies that have been implanted into their lives, but now they're starting to believe a certain kind of truth about themselves that actually helps them launch into a much better mental state of mind, and a spiritual state at that. And so that's how I would say, those are some important factors, I think, in getting your mind right. Pay attention to your self-talk, and then once you do, surround yourself with the right kinds of voices that will speak some truth into your world.
Absolutely. I heard it said like this before. It's not what everybody else says about you that's true. It's what you say about you that's true.
That's you're the one who's going to go to sleep at night with you. You got to be at peace with yourself and what you say to yourself. Absolutely. I love that. Absolutely.
So next question here. What do you do when your normal routine is thrown off? How you stay mentally strong and engaged when life's abnormal. I mean, this is abnormal times. This is weird. We had to bring our kids home. Josiah's used to that big old campus up at Penn State. He comes back to the little old country town, and but what do you do? They got back into their routine pretty well, but some people, I don't think, still yet are there, and we're well into this. So what do you do when your normal routine's thrown off, and how do you stay mentally strong and engaged when life is abnormal?
Yeah, that's so hard, Eric. I mean, for me, I'm generally a goal-driven productivity junkie. If I'm not being productive, I'll fall into a deep slump, and it's hard to get me out of that. And so I've had to guard myself, even personally, during the season. And I think that's why campus ministry works well for me and my makeup, because from August to May, it's just go, go, go. There's no stop. But when a pandemic hits your world, that go, go, go routine comes to a hard stop. And I think a lot of people are feeling that, and they're not sure how to handle that. And I'll just say this, there's so much information out there, and you could probably even Google, how to maintain strong mental health during quarantine season. And you could, there's all kinds of great information out there. So I don't claim to have the single greatest answer for how to handle the season. But for me, I have found creating a series of mini goals has been tremendously helpful, because I'm so productive driven and goal driven and do go. I've got to set up little mile markers along the way to know that I'm actually making some progress. I'm actually moving towards something. I'm not at a standstill. Growing up in New York City, traffic was a way of life. It just drove you nuts. But like emotionally, mentally, when you're stuck in traffic, like in your mental state, like that has a way of driving you nuts. And so for me, I've had to create new patterns and rhythms for my life. In daily, weekly patterns in hopes to provide that same kind of productivity and progress driven mentality. And so, for instance, every morning I get up with my wife and I work out with her together. We work out together in the basement. And I got to say, just the act of physical exercise is enough to keep the mental bugs away. I mean, it's just mind, body, and spirit. I mean, God created us holistically, and so yes, read your Bible, pray, and all those things, but also get your blood moving. Go outside for a walk and move around, and then depending on the day, for me, I'll have various Zoom meetings to stay connected with people. That's important to me and important in my field of work, and then on top of that, on days like Mondays and Saturdays, which is why I couldn't schedule an earlier Monday time. A good chunk of my day on Mondays and Saturdays is used up by distributing food and groceries to people in need in our community. As a side note, if you want to find ways to stay mentally strong and healthy, do something for someone else. Yeah. Go like do something that is adding value to someone else's life. Man, it'll recharge your mental state like never before. And so, I've been doing things like that, spending a lot of time with our boys, getting outside, working on a little project. We just built a little fire pit in our backyard together the other day, and, finding little, again, mini goals. It's not a lot, just these mini goals to kind of trigger your mind and just jolt your mental state to say, okay, life is not at a standstill. I'm actually making progress and making some movement here. And I'll just say this one last piece, Eric. I think perspective goes a long way. I found myself constantly telling myself throughout the season, this isn't forever. This too shall pass. And some things may look indefinitely different after this, coming out of this pandemic. But in terms of this concentrated season of like isolation, social distancing, quarantine, all of this, it's going to pass, and it's not going to be forever. And just having that little bit of a perspective shift has helped my mental state in a big way. I know I said last thing, but I just keep thinking of things. just with the mind of a preacher, I just keep talking. So interrupt me, stop me, say stop. But this is one last thing. I've learned this over the course of my life, and it's a lesson that I try to teach our college students. And it's not even original to me. It might have been Stephen Covey or someone, I don't know, but just the value of being proactive versus reactive, yes. Right? Like, I think that's just so valuable, especially during a time like we're in right now. We can either react to being stay-at-home orders. We could react to, the news media and outlets that we're seeing, and we can react to it's so easy to react in a season like this. It's not as easy to be proactive, but I think that's the key to maintaining mental health and strength and fortitude during this time. You don't accidentally get strong. Like physically, you don't, you just stumble into physical strength. You got to work out, you got to eat right and exercise. And I think it's the same way with mental health and strength. You got to be proactive. And so find creative ways, just try a bunch of stuff out, man, experiment and see what gives you life and energy and excitement and joy. So that's what I say. I think there's so much I can say on that, how to handle this weird time that we're in, but those are some ways that I've been handling this time.
Yeah, I mean, the big piece there, and you saw me nodding my head quite a bit when you said that, because I'm a big believer in if you want to get out of a funk, attention off yourself and give to somebody else.
That's it.
There's so much science around it. I mean, but even that, I mean, but there's just so much to that. And I think at this time, to not be so selfish, to be more selfless, and really get out there and give. And it doesn't have to be. Some of us don't have money or things like that. It could just be giving of our time, our energy, or in some cases, like, we've been doing a lot, just listening.
That's it. That's it.
So last thing, sometimes we leave with a favorite quote or motto or something, and I know you all have one in your house, and I love it. So can you share it before we end this podcast, please?
Yeah.
It's practical. I love practical.
Practical. I'm with you, Eric, man. If it ain't practical, I don't want it, man. A motto that my wife and I live by, that we preach, that we, is simply deal with your stuff. Deal with your stuff. And what I mean by stuff is deal with the stuff inside here, because if you don't, it's going to find its way eventually out there. And, we tell our students, don't go around crapping on people. Like, deal with your crap, like deal with your stuff, deal with your junk, so that you don't put your junk on other people. And because quite frankly, here's what I believe as a follower of Jesus and as a Christian man. And I believe that God has put me on this earth to add value to people. And I can't add value to people if all I'm doing is spewing out my junk and my stuff. So much of dealing with your stuff is, again, managing your self-talk and bringing that before God, or processing that. Like, if you're a person of faith, do that. If you're not, find other ways to kind of process through what's going on up in your headspace. And soul care, like taking care of what's inside here. Gauging your joy meter, how joyful are you? Quite frankly, I believe Christians are to be the most joyful people on the planet. Like, we've got the most joyful news. Unfortunately, Christians get a bad rap. Like, we're seen as anything but joyful, and I just don't believe that that's who we're called to be. And so, how's your joy meter? Like, taking inventory of what's in here, so that when it actually comes to the mission of adding value to the world and adding value to people, we can actually do that because we've done the work of dealing with our stuff. And so that's in a nutshell, deal with your stuff, man.
I like it because every point that you made, every question that you answered, you can go back and attribute that motto to. So
that's it. See, these aren't just answers, man. Eric, I live this, man. This is in me. So yeah, absolutely.
Deal with your stuff. I really thank you for being on today. Folks, that's all for today. I really hope you enjoyed this. I know I got a lot out of it. Hopefully we can have you back at some other time. Dan, would love to have you back. Maybe you and your wife this time. Don't want to leave her out.
Yeah.
Just make sure you leave the video a like, and let a comment down in the comment section below, please. We'd also appreciate it if you'd hit subscribe, as well as the bell icon, so you can get notified when we post next. If you'd like more information, you could always reach us at centerforvictory.com. And just remember, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, make this your best day yet. See you soon.